the Nigerian government requires an investment size of 348 trillion naira to achieve the target set out in the National Development Plan for 2021 through to 2025, according to President Buhari, who said this in Abuja. The president spoke at the formal launch and public presentation of the National Development Plan 2021 through 2025, the successor to the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan from 2017 through 2020, which lapsed in December of 2020. Here to discuss this with us is Ayodeji Ebo, who is the head of retail investment at Chapel Hill Denham. Ayodeji, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, so as far as this plan is concerned, I wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not there should be an assessment of the previous plan that has just elapsed. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at policy assessment, before you even come up with a new policy, it's also always good to show how much in terms of achievement, even if there's a significant gap, it's good to be able to ascertain it. So when you look at the Economic Recovery Growth Plan, which from 2017 to 2020, there were some threshold or benchmark that were set in terms of the employment rate that as of 2020 would drop to about 11%. We know where it is now. Mm-hmm. In terms of employment generation, I think in 2017, one was 3.8, 4.3, and I think 5.0 million jobs will be created. That's annually between that period. We've not achieved that. When you look at the reality is that more people have lost job, more people have gone into poverty. Yes, we may want to maybe hide under the impact of COVID, but when you look at even the growth rate that was projected for 2020 was around 7%. Yes, COVID hit and impacted on that, but we all know that there's really no policy that we can point to that would really take us to that 7% growth that was projected. So you would notice that in terms of the last growth plan, there was little was achieved. Yep. And it's also always good to state that now we have another plan.
Yes.
And we know in Nigeria we're always very good in terms of policy formation.
Right.
Our challenge is always the implementation. Yes, looking at this new report that there will be an implementation unit or committee that will be monitoring, but when you look at the effectiveness or how we have been planning, except there's going to be a surprise. We are already going into an election here, and you see most government wants to always look good prior to election.
Yes.
And for investors they will be expecting to get these funds for, this is period of uncertainty. Before we get much stability, will be in 2024. People want to know who is going to be the next president. We want to look at what policy view will he have. These are some of the questions that we're going into the mind of long-term investors before they begin to put in funds.
And speaking of which, thank you for mentioning that continuity. We don't know who will be in. Maybe the APC maintains power, a new administration comes in. Is that not a concern as far as, because this plan is from 2021 through to 2025. So our investors also, is continuity, policy continuity a concern?
That's a major risk, which we know in Nigeria, if a new government comes in, wants to set up his own and own it, which is a major concern also to investors. So we don't have that consistency in terms of having people follow through or follow on from where people are stopped in terms of policies. So it's really going to be a major concern, and we won't be surprised to see a new plan with a new name once a new government comes in.
We had the plan up a few minutes ago, so we put that back up. The likelihood of averaging 5% GDP growth from now till 2025. There it is. So what do you make of that GDP targets? No,
I feel it's very optimistic, and the base effect had helped us in 2021, and 2022 would be riding on that high base effect again, which will mean that we'll have a more suppressed growth rate on a year-on-year basis. So we still feel that projection is still at sub 3%. And when you also look at that vis-a-vis the population growth rate at slightly above 3%. So it's almost based on this analysis, we know that it means more Nigerians will go into poverty, hardship will still be there. Yeah, we would expect more spending pre-election or during election period. But most of those fundings are not into productive sectors, so you don't expect any major result output even in 2023. So when you look at the situation of things, election year, pre-election year are always period of uncertainty, and before we can begin to see investors looking at Nigeria, looking at coming in to play long, would be in 2024, when they would have seen a bit of direction based on what the new government in power wants to do.
What we've had, and maybe your answer will be along these same lines. We've had increasing unemployment figures in the country. The plan also states that there is a target of creating, I believe, it's about 15 million jobs or so. I guess broken down over the 4 years would be about 3.24 million jobs per year. Is that also another optimistic target there?
Sure, it's very optimistic, but it's not impossible. It's about the willingness and the drive for us, for us to be able to achieve that. To be able to achieve about 15 million jobs, we need that participation of private investors. And for now, they will be skeptical in investing in the country, because we need to, some of the things we have enough things to do. When we add value to a lot of things that we export, we generate sufficient job. We also look at insecurity. If we don't tackle insecurity, even private sector support that we're looking out for, we may not be able to achieve that. And if we don't achieve that, there will be no creation, no investment. There's no investment, there will be no job. And it just goes in cycles. And if we are unable to create as much job as expected, it also finds its way of fueling insecurity. Because when you look at the agri sector, that is the major employer of labor, a lot of the food producing regions are really experienced. They were not even able to plant we are currently in the harvest season. Yeah. So that is even impacting. You can see food inflation at almost up 20%. Despite the harvest season. So we know that there's a lot of challenges that needs to be sorted out, and we need that willpower, political willpower, to see how we want to sort them.
Fantastic. COVID, according to the World Bank, pushed an estimated 7 million more Nigerians into poverty. The plan also has a poverty alleviation target, 35 million within the 2021 to 2025, which is part of the 100 million figure. I guess, same question, is that also a realistic, because we're just coming out of recession, and then you've got all these people that fell into poverty. How quickly can you get them out?
So if we look at what's available, it's not impossible, but it's now the willpower and the ability for us to begin to implement policies. When you look at the policy, it looks very comforting, very interesting, but how much of implementation are we going to be able to achieve? That is the major concern. And if we don't implement, it will just be another theoretical document that at the end of the day, nothing much will be achieved. The Vision 2020, the EGRP, the Economic Sustainability Plan, how much of implementation has been done? How many jobs have been created as a result of these policies? So it's not, Nigerians are not really excited about the numbers. It's more of, we need to begin to get to the ground, begin to work. How do we deliberately attract investment? When you look at direct investment, I think Q3 is dropped about $40 million. So it's depleting by the day. It's the foreign direct investment that will create the jobs that we need. When you look at the breakdown, about 347 trillion naira that is required. Private sector is required to bring that. 85%. And government, even if government is also going to bring that, they come to the market to raise funds. Look at the total pension funds assets is about 13 trillion. But look at even if we have not invested those funds, 13 trillion is like times, when you look at the amount required, is like times 4 of what is needed. The assets that we currently have, which are the major investors in Nigeria. So you look at things, they are not really adding up. So in terms of expectation, we shouldn't really get so excited.
Ayodeji Ebo, Head of Retail Investment at Chapel Hill Denham, thank you so much for joining us.
Always my pleasure.
Appreciate your time.